speakers on the dais, respected church leaders, my brothers and sisters. Thank you, Dr. Maxon, for waking all of them up. It makes my task easier so that you will listen to me also. We remember that in September 2015, on the 2nd of September 2015, the world woke up to the newspaper. They saw in the newspaper the photograph of a small 3-year-old boy, Alan Kurdi. He was face down on a Turkish beach as he drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. He and his family were Syrian refugees trying to reach Europe during the European refugee crisis. The photograph not only defined the refugee crisis, but also moved the world to tears and to take action. BBC named it one of those moments when the world seems to care, and went on to quote Alan Kurdi's aunt, who said, "There was something about that picture. God put the light on that picture to wake up the world." Jolted from the slumber to the reality of the refugee crisis, it was in the aftermath of Alan's death that most European leaders finally promised to share the responsibility for at least some of the refugees landing on Greek and Italian shores. It was hailed as a watershed moment for European migration policy. Some of you must be thinking why I'm not taking the podium, simply because I'm too short for that. Wars and conflicts and persecutions have forced people to flee from their houses and seek refuge and safety in other places. From 2010 to 2014, at least 15 conflicts had erupted or reignited in Africa, in Middle East, in Europe, in Asia, and in several areas of Myanmar and Pakistan, creating an increase in the number of refugees and internally displaced people. The year 2014 saw the highest level of worldwide displacement ever recorded, representing the biggest leap ever seen in a single year. Most alarmingly, however, it showed that over half of the world's refugees are children. It was predicted that the situation was likely to worsen further. Globally, 1 in every 122 humans was either a refugee. I'm talking about 2014. Was either a refugee, internally displaced, or seeking asylum. If this was a population of a country, it would have been the world's 24th biggest country. Asia, which has for long been one of the world's major displacement-producing regions, saw an unprecedented increase of 31%. Few of these crises have been resolved, and most still generate new displacement. Decades-old instability and conflict means that millions of people remain on the move or stranded for years on the edge of society. Global trends in 2018, it would be nice to look at the statistics. As on 19 June 2018, the UNHCR figures at a glance shows that the world is now witnessing the highest levels of displacement on record. An unprecedented 68.5 million people around the world have been forced from home, of whom 40 million are internally displaced people, nearly 25.4 million are refugees, 3.1 million are asylum seekers. What is most worrying, again, is that over half are under the age of 18. There are also an estimated 10 million stateless people who have been denied a nationality and access to basic rights such as education, healthcare, employment, and freedom of movement. 85% of the world's displaced people come from developing countries. 57% of the refugees worldwide come from 3 countries: South Sudan, 2.4 million, Afghanistan, 2.6 million, and Syria, 6.3 million. One person is forcibly displaced every 2 seconds, which means 44,000 people in a day are forced to flee their homes as a result of conflict and persecution. As ongoing crises in many countries deepen, for many refugees, the search for safety and protection has been more dangerous. They often arrive sick, traumatized, and hungry. Children separated from their families are severely traumatized. Men and women suffer appalling atrocities. Some have severe physical injuries. Women are raped. They struggle to care for their children as their partners were dead or missing. Elderly refugees struggle on their own. And people with disabilities uprooted from their communities are exposed to the elements and stay in overcrowded, unhygienic conditions. Disoriented, traumatized, and propelled into a dangerous existence, their ordeal mirrors that of millions of refugees and displaced people globally. Today, the despair of millions of men, women and children driven from their homes is a stain on the world's collective conscience. India is a country that was born in the midst of one of the largest refugee flows in history, and today still sees mixed migration flows. Refugees, economic migrants and others cross borders every day in thousands. India has a long tradition of receiving refugees that goes back centuries. In more recent times, the largest groups of refugees in India are Sri Lankan Tamils, Tibetans. The two largest groups of refugees recognized by the UNHCR are Afghans and Myanmar nationals, but people from countries as diverse as Somalia and Iraq have also sought help from the office. Rohingya, of course, are also not recognized. Migration in the Bible. We find stories of human nobility from the earliest accounts in the Bible, from Abraham's call to the Exodus from Egypt, from the people of Israel wandering in the desert in exile, and the voyage of the Holy Family in Egypt, to the church's missionary activity. The saga of the Holy Family echoes in today's migrants. In the apostolic exhortation, Exul Familia, or the family in exile, Pope Pius XII offers the Holy Family in exile in Egypt as the icon of massive forced migrations that we are seeing today. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, living in exile in Egypt to escape the fury of an evil king, are for all times and all places the models and protectors of every migrant, alien and refugee, of whatever kind, who, whether compelled by fear of persecution or by want, is forced to leave his native land, his beloved parents and relatives, his close friends, to seek foreign soil. Appalled by the alarming escalation in the number of migrants, refugees, displaced and asylum seekers globally, and the resistance of countries in giving them shelter, Pope Francis preached a homily on Christmas Eve, December 2017, extolling the Holy Family as an example for today's burgeoning numbers of people who find themselves unwillingly on the move. We see the tracks of millions of persons who do not choose to go away, but driven from their land, leave behind their dear ones. In many cases, this departure is filled with hope for the future. Yet for many others, this departure can only have one name: survival. Surviving the Herods of today, who to impose their power and increase their wealth see no problem in shedding innocent blood. Pope Francis said that the faith that we proclaim helps us to see God in all the situations where we think He is absent. God is present in the unwelcome visitor, often unrecognizable as He walks through the cities and the neighborhoods, who travel on buses, knocks at our doors. He called for a new social imagination that welcomes newcomers rather than ostracizing them and is not afraid of experiencing new forms of relationship. A new social imagination in which none have to feel that there is no room for them on this earth. We should instead show hospitality for today's displaced persons, including immigrants and refugees. We can also draw a parallel between Veronica's concern for Jesus as he walked the path to Calvary, carrying his cross, caring for the suffering refugees. Pope Francis said, we instinctively try to run away from suffering because suffering is repugnant to us. We come across so many faces disfigured by the afflictions of life, and too often we turn away. How can we not see the face of the Lord in the face of the millions of exiles, refugees, and displaced persons who are fleeing in desperation from the horror of war, persecution, and dictatorship? For every one of them, each with a unique face, God reveals Himself as the one who courageously comes to our aid, like Veronica, the woman whose face is unknown to us, who will lovingly wipe Jesus' face. Yesterday was World Refugee Day. The theme for the World Refugee Day 2018 was, now more than ever, we need to stand with refugees. Last year's theme was embracing refugees to celebrate our common humanity. I am glad that we also stood for a minute in solidarity and also celebrating the perseverance and resilience of people on the move when Professor Maman asked us to stand up in silence. On World Refugee Day, mayors from more than 50 cities around the world stood in solidarity with the refugees. They called for more local authorities and municipalities to join them in welcoming the refugees. When refugees arrive in a new country, nearly 2 out of these settle in an urban area. Therefore, cities have to improve infrastructure, services, administrative systems in order to meet governance challenges such as incorporating large inflows of new residents. Local authorities shoulder the enormous responsibility of providing access to housing, healthcare, education, skills, training, and employment opportunities for newcomers and long-term residents alike. Solutions to refugee crisis start at the local level and require that everyone plays a part. Every city, every neighborhood, and every individual can contribute. This was said in a letter of solidarity by the United Nations. Leaders must create spaces where everyone can live in safety, become self-reliant, and contribute to participate in their local community. They call the global community to join them and stand with refugees. This then is the space where churches and faith-based organizations can step in. Together we can make a world of difference. These are of course long-term goals. There are immediate and easier tasks that we can engage in our own localities. We have heard for the last 3 days from our brothers and sisters in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu and Kerala, in Sri Perumbudur and Vellore, in Mumbai and Delhi, and we are touched and inspired by the hard and selfless work, journeying with migrants and refugees and displaced people. We have seen how churches can open up the homeless and the uprooted by offering them community care, spiritual care, health care, and legal advice. I have seen the same Christian concern and compassion in churches in Bangkok and Hong Kong, even in Portland, Oregon, where migrants and asylum seekers are welcome for holy worship, Sunday worship, stay for food and community fellowship. The church elders greet them. They give them medical aid, legal aid, and advocacy in the home ministries. The women's fellowship teaches them income-generating skills and also cooking cheaper and quicker in the new environment. In Hong Kong, migrants had their own ethnic groups and would meet every week or month and share their burdens and problems. Church leaders were part of these groups and would reach out to the suffering and needy and try to solve their problems. Offer, an organization that worked with Sri Lankan refugees, used to share with us that in adverse situations, women are more resilient and organized and managed to earn money to look after their family. They would rear hens, weave baskets, and other handiwork which were stress-relieving therapies in themselves. We have heard for the last 2 days the theological and biblical foundations of embracing the stranger, Church's mission and prophetic witness. Let us, in the words of Pope Francis, strive to welcome, to protect, promote, and integrate the stranger by putting into action a series of everyday gestures to remind the world that we are one human family, that we need each other, and that together it is possible to create a wave of solidarity which is capable of moving the stones of indifference, prejudice, and fear. Let us work towards a world sans borders, because God's love knows no borders. Thank you.